Hello, today we're going to be talking about installing our heating cable system in the basement of this house behind me. So come on in and we'll get started. Now that we've adhered the cerasorb to the floor, now we're going to set up the perimeter of the heating area in this specific room. And what I need to do is I'm going to attach the double-sided tape to the cerasorb, and once I put the double-sided tape down, I'm then going to put the cable guide strips down onto them, and that will create our barrier for this wall. Now that we've got the double-sided tape on the cerasorb, at this point we're going to pull the red backing off of the double-sided tape. Once we've marked the perimeter of our heated space with our double-sided tape, we're now going to take out our cable fixing strips, which are here in a box, and there are 30 per box. That coincides perfectly because they are about 1 foot long and there is 30 feet of tape in each roll. So if you are getting a roll of tape, you should equate that to a box of cable fixing strips. Okay, if you look at the cable fixing strip, you can see it's a one-sided device. If you turn it this way, it doesn't work very well. What you want is the rounded side to be facing the wall or the unheated area. When you're ready to put the strips onto the double-sided tape, it may be easy to assemble as many as you can in advance because they're a little bit easier to click together while you're standing up than when you're working on the floor. Now that we've got the backing off of the tape, we're going to go ahead and put the strips down onto the double-sided tape. One of these strips is about 1 foot long. The idea is to do one strip at a time, even though they're put together, because what that'll do is it'll help you keep it straight. All right, what we have here is we have our cable on a spool, and this cable is a 435-foot cable, and that will fill the entire area here. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and take the plastic wrap off, and we'll go ahead and start setting it out. Now when you get the cable out of the spool, the first thing you want to do is you want to test it with a digital ohm meter. The ohm value is located on the UL label. What we want to do is we want to make sure that we were within 5 to 10% of what the value is on the label. So we're going to test this with a digital ohm meter right now. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to test between the ground and the red. We should have a 1 or an OL or an OF there. That is telling us that there is no continuity between the ground and this part of the center core wire. We're now going to test the black wire to the ground. It's giving us the same reading on the digital ohm meter, so it tells us that this roll is good to put in. Now we're ready to actually install the cable. If you take a look at the cable here, you can see that this is the heating portion of the cable, this is the splice, and this is the non-heating cold lead. This cold lead is actually non-heating, it doesn't get warm at all. This is the heating wire. The splice and the heating wire all have to be buried in thin set or self-leveling. Now we can get an idea of where the splice is going to be sitting above the cerasorb. At this point we're going to have to cut the cerasorb out, and that will allow the splice to go down and be covered by thin set. Now we notice the way the splice is going to be sitting in the floor. We can then cut around the splice, cutting through the cerasorb. Then we're going to pull the cerasorb away so the splice will sit down into the cerasorb. One very, very important point is do not cut the wire with the blade. If the blade cuts through the splice or damages the outside of the wire, please give us a call at 800-875-5285, 24/7. Now that we've got the cut out in the cerasorb for the splice, I'm going to use some tape just to hold the whole assembly in place so I can start pulling the cable. The important thing is when you're pulling this cable is to not pull up on it. The strength of the tape is in the shear resistance, which means pulling it directly from the side. But if you pull it straight at a low angle, the tape will stay in place and the strips will stay attached to that tape. Okay, our end cap is stopping in the middle of a run, so we do the same thing that we did for the splice. We're going to mark the location of it, and we're going to cut the spot out where it's going to rest. So now I've used some tape to hold it in place. Now that we have the cable laid out in the way we want it, we now are going to take some masking tape. Smaller the better, you don't want it too thick. So right now we have about an inch thick tape here, and we're going to tape the wire down every 2 to 3 feet to hold the wire in position while you're troweling over it, or to hold it down if you're going to be covering it with self-leveling. Now that we have laid the cable out on the floor and secured it to the floor, now's the time to take the next ohm measurement. So once again, we're going to test it just like we did before. We're going to test from core wire to core wire. I'm going to write that number down. Hopefully that number is the same as it was when we took it out of the box, and this one is. Next step is to go from one of the core wires to the ground, and the next thing we're going to do is we're going to do the same test going from black to ground. Before we cover the cables with thin set, we want to make sure that we test it with a digital ohm meter like we've shown you how to do. And now it's time to install the circuit check device. So if you take a look at the circuit check device, you can see that this is, first of all, is a 240 volt roll because it says 240 on the sticker. It also says 240 on the UL listing label. And our cables are red and black, which signifies 240 volts. So what we're going to do is we're just going to line up the black wire with the black wire, the ground with the green, and we're going to put the red into the red terminal. Once we have that ready to go, just turn the unit on, and it's nice and quiet, which means the cable is in good condition. Now that we've got the splice buried and all of the heating wire buried under thin set, now we have to get the wire into the wall. Now what you need to do is you need to follow your local electrical code to see if it requires the use of conduit in the wall or if it does not. Our local code requires that the high power wire that sends power from the thermostat to the floor, it requires the use of conduit. So what we've done now is we've got the conduit started, we've attached a fish wire to that conduit, and we're going to pull this fish wire up, and it's going to bring the conduit up to the thermostat box. When you're buying your thermostat box, please make sure that you buy a 4x4 extra deep box to mount that thermostat in. You'll need a single gang mud ring to attach your thermostat to that 4x4 box. Now we have our conduit pulled out of the wall. This will allow us to attach the conduit to the 4x4 box when we install it. Now that we can see we have a little bit of extra flexible conduit here, what we're going to do is we're going to cut this off and we're going to attach it here, and then we're also going to use an approved bushing to put around the edge because these do get sharp and we do not want to damage the cable as we pull it up the conduit. Okay, now what we've done is we've shortened the conduit and we have the cable sticking out. We've got the fitting here ready to go into the 4x4 box. We're then going to take the label and we're going to attach it here so that there is always a label attached so the customer knows what the length of the cable is, what the ohms are, that sort of thing. Now that we have this installed, we'll go ahead and put the tile down, and then at that point we'll test the cables again to make sure that everything's good. If they test good after the tile is down, we're done. And here we are with the finished product. You can see we have a nice beautiful tile floor installed and the basement is now finished. What we started with was a bare concrete slab, insulated that concrete slab with Cerazorb. We then installed electric heating cable on top of the Cerazorb and covered it with self-leveling cement. Then the tilers came in and got to work and got the tile all put down. Once the tile was installed, the electrician hooked all the cables up to the main electrical system and to the thermostat, and here we are with a finished, beautiful basement.